Yes, needs to go forward. Needs to go Om Shanti, good evening. Welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. Our topic today is the significance of physical sustenance, part 3. So as usual, we're going to start with a reflection. And while that's going on, we'll see if we can adjust the cameras a bit so they're not so distant and far apart. So if we can lower the phone.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
I'm not sure how.
Anyway, sitting comfortably. And as always, if you want to experiment with eyes open in a natural way, you're welcome to. And taking perhaps a breath or two to help the body relax into the space. Perhaps the most powerful relationship that we have as spiritual beings is with the physical body and the sustenance of the physical body. We are in this body, so as we sustain it physically, what is sustaining me, the soul, spiritually? The body is made up of 5 to 6 key elements: hydrogen, oxygen, etc. Whereas I am made up of love, peace, truth. As the body breathes in oxygen, physical oxygen, my own mind is seeking the oxygen of peace. And I wonder if it's possible to blend the two. Just as I, the soul, I'm in this physical form, is it possible to inject physical sustenance with the qualities that feed me? This is what we explore when we look at the significance of physical sustenance. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. So welcome again to part 3 of the significance of physical sustenance, Interview with the Raj Yogi. So some other questions came up last week, so we thought that it would be nice to continue with this as a nice transition to our topic next week. So for those who have joined, for those who are not aware of the topic of what Raja Yoga is about, we'll cover a bit more today in terms of this identity of ourselves. And so one of the questions that came up, we may have touched upon it last week a bit, which was about this aspect of physically consuming. And why is it that when we physically consume and consume, it doesn't seem like it's enough? It's just not satisfying. Always seem to need more.
Well, I question if that's always been the case. I often will watch little children eat, and it's really difficult to get the food into them. They seem to, it varies with every soul, of course, but it does look like there's other factors at play rather than just, strictly what the body needs. That there's other things at play when we look at physical sustenance. And so I know we've talked before about comfort food, etc. And perhaps even that we've gotten a little numb to the signals the body is sending when it's full or what it needs. So what's at play within the soul, such that something in me, the soul, is interfering in actually the process of feeding the body. You would think that it's just a strict case of putting food into the body, but there's something going on in me such that perhaps a hunger in the soul that I'm trying to fulfill through physical sustenance, and of course trying to get something spiritual through the physical food may not work out well. So I'm always feeling hungry.
I suppose science may not be able to really explain that.
Yeah, I think science is being forced more and more to be a little bit comprehensive in the way it's looking at, us as human beings. That we are not just strictly a series of chemical reactions, but there's something else going on. I can see that things are shifting in the medical community, definitely, but they always want to measure, be able to measure, not just they have a theory, but then they need to have measurable, quantifiable proof of that theory. And I can see that that can cause problems because so much of spirituality is quantity, not quality. Is quality, not quantity. So it'll be very difficult to measure.
Which is interesting. I know it came up in terms of the topic of food for the mind. And we may not even be aware we're souls, but we know that we want to be mindful of what we're thinking about.
Yeah, that's really a growing popular trend. Sometimes we call it positive thinking or whatever the case, or mindfulness. I think souls are increasingly aware of the power of thoughts without even getting into spirituality or consciousness or awareness, but just this feeling that thoughts are very powerful. You are what you eat. That thoughts, they say, no, you should never, if they see someone putting themselves down, expressing the thoughts in their hand, and say, no, you shouldn't think that way. I know I heard that the other day. So we do seem to intuitively know the power of thoughts that we feed our mind has a big effect.
I know we covered it the last 2 sessions, but it does feel like the line gets a bit more blurred, I suppose, in terms of physical sustenance, of just what sustenance is, to just be sustained. And I'm not sure it was a couple of sessions ago in terms of there is the physical aspect, social aspect, there's economical aspect, and then there's the psychological and mental health aspect. And that seems to sometimes feel like it's the same as spirituality, but it's not. And I guess we've tried to find ways through psychology to try to explain why we just consume and so on.
Yeah, it never, spirituality goes beyond the experiences of this current lifetime when we say that we are a soul. So often psychology goes into the psyche of what happened to the soul in sort of a physical way. And spirituality really kind of expands our sense of self. So it's quite a different ballpark. It looks at, and I think it actually simplifies because, and again, I know these are leaps and bounds we're suggesting, so it's all based on the teachings of Raj Yoga, but it kind of suggests that we all are quite united in what we're kind of suffering from spiritually, rather than having to look at the different details of each one's life. There are some common threads when we look spiritually. What every soul is seeking starts to become the same when we move into spirituality. And that, I think, makes it really interesting.
It was interesting. This is years and years ago, but there was some statistics of showing that, ironically, the States, which is considered to be a very wealthy country, has actually the highest levels of malnourishment because they're eating a lot of fast food. And now we're not talking about the physical food, but I've definitely discovered, being in the study, how much that there is some sort of parallel in terms of the state of the soul and what's actually happening on a physical level.
Yeah, definitely. Again, moving from the inside, that core of spirituality, out through emotional, mental to physical, it's massive. You know, I do remember hearing about, now I even experienced it myself, but you know, the first student, Brahma Baba, who was, I believe, 93 when he eventually passed away, and they would describe the feeling of the skin of the body he was in. He's 93, so but it was like cotton wool. You know, it was very soft, and I have experienced that with seniors as well. This sense that the stage that they were in was actually transforming the matter around them, which is fascinating to me. And just the other day, I was having to take my physical mother to an eye appointment, and it was very interesting because she has to go through about, I don't know, 4 or 5 different attendants who do different tests. And it was sort of the same every single time. We'd come into the room and they look at the sheet and they say, she's 93? There's no way she's 93. She doesn't look 93. And I'm sorry, it's like, she's 93. But she doesn't look 93. Oh, I don't know what to tell you. She's 93. And it always intrigues me what's going on inside the soul, such that they've transformed matter to that degree. And some say it's genes or it's culture. And it's like, I don't know. I know other people without that culture that don't. So it has a lot to do with what's going on in the soul, how that affects physical matter is huge.
So physical sustenance aside, like, what is it why do we need sustenance for then? Like, well, if we're going to talk about being aware that I'm a soul, what is going to be sustaining for me then?
As a soul, definitely, it's not physical sustenance that sustains us or fills us up. But I think when we look at physical sustenance as a metaphor, it helps us to understand how it works with the self, the soul as well. So when we look at the body, something as simple as water. So in the reflection, we talked about the physical body, and I think this would surprise people because, the physical body, it just seems very complicated. And to hear that it's just made up of 5 or 6 major elements, and then there's some trace elements, but hydrogen, carbon, etc., nitrogen, oxygen. I think that alone, I'm really surprised that we still think we're the body when we discover what it's made of. But it's just made up of 5 or 6 major elements and a few trace. And so hydrogen's huge. The water element of the body is huge. Huge percentage of the body is made of water. And so as the body becomes deficient in water, we start to get the signal. The body sends a signal to me, the soul, saying, I'm thirsty, which it actually is right now. So then that's what we do. We water the body, right? We throw so that it cries out for that it's becoming deficient in. So the exact same thing happens for me, the soul. I can begin to know what I'm made of, what sustains me, by what I cry out for. So, of course, the number one cry in the world is for peace. And there's also unconditional love, trust, power. There's a lot of things that we do that express our desire for power. And when I say power, it's not force, violence, but just this sense of mastery, of not being affected, so easily affected by things. So there's certain things that we cry out for. We hear balance a lot, bliss, happiness, etc. So we're crying out for these things, desperately seeking them, because it's what we're made of. So as we become deficient in them, we seek sustenance. Now the problem is, much as we see with the body, and I know you quoted the stats in the States, the body is also hungry, but I'm actually feeding it things that aren't really replacing what it's becoming deficient in, but are addictive. So I'm constantly feeding the body things that's now addicted to, but actually don't replace what it's, doesn't give what it's crying out for. And this can happen spiritually as well. I'm crying out for happiness and peace. So I start to look for it largely in physical, even though these are non-physical items, I try to look for it in physical things. I try and get happiness by shopping for things, right? And so it's not actually fulfilling. It's not replacing what I'm becoming deficient in, but it is certainly addictive. Mm-hmm. So it's just like the same thing that we see with physical sustenance, we start to see happening with ourselves as spiritual beings.
So why is it that you do hear that in certain, religions, or there's this aspect of fasting, and some more ascetic practices where they just are trying to, it's not really about starving, but it's trying to overcome something about the body. Mm-hmm. What is that all about?
I think all of these are just trying to express needs of the soul, mm-hmm. because again,
without knowing it,
yeah, I think the soul is crying out for something that we're not aware of. The body is just trying to survive, and we're not listening to the signals at all. So both are actually not being cared for at their best. I know there's a variety of reasons that souls fast, but it's always, I think, very important to listen, and actually my capacity to listen to the body improves the more spiritually developed I become. We just become, we use the word sensible, or sensitive in a very benevolent way, not in a reactive way, so that I'll actually be, because I'm not abusing the body now to try to fulfill spiritual needs, I can actually listen to what the body needs itself and have my spiritual needs fulfilled through spirituality. But once we get those mixed up, trying to fulfill my spiritual needs through the body, through physicality, then the body isn't getting what it needs, and I, the soul, am not getting what I need. So there is, of course, this idea of fasting and spirituality. It has nothing to do with the fast, say, from waste thoughts, etc. Mm-hmm. And that requires, again, a lot of understanding. And we even understanding in both. Physical sustenance, spiritual sustenance requires tremendous understanding. It's not just about denial, mm-hmm. or binging or any of these things. But as my understanding improves, then I can care at both levels, mm-hmm. in a much better way.
As souls, is our relationship with the body such that it's so enmeshed now that I know we mentioned this last week, but grandma's apple pie. Mm-hmm. I'd like a lovely cup of hot chocolate, and this is more of the physical food sustenance, like, oh, it's so nice just to be by a fire. And then we say it feeds the soul. I hear that so much.
Yeah. And I totally understand. And what it's saying is the soul wants something. Mm-hmm. And and it's, I sort of compare it to this example came up the other day, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but the idea that, if someone falls on the ground suddenly with a heart attack,
okay, get your phone working again.
So sorry, I was just trying to read that comment. It's an excellent question. How would you define spirituality? We'll answer that in just a moment. But if someone falls on the ground with a heart attack, you provide immediate acute care. This is not the time saying, if you cut back on the cholesterol, like that's not the time to try to. So I can see that, that sometimes we just want an immediate acute care. There's a spiritual need. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling anxious. And we go for that. But eventually we're going to have to look at how can we fulfill a spiritual need spiritually, is the question. So we're using the word spiritual a lot. So it's a really good question, how we define spirituality. And again, I'm just drawing on the teachings of Raj Yoga in answering the question. I think you'll probably be able to figure out the answer to the question when we set it up this way. But, when we talk about humility, it means having the quality of being humble. When we talk about generosity, it means having the quality of being generous. When we say civility, having the quality of being civil. Dignity, the quality of being dignified. So when we talk about spirituality, it's having this quality of being spiritual. And spiritual in a very basic way means non-physical. So there's a lot that falls into that category: thoughts, feelings, attitudes, etc. This is all under the realm of non-physical, but it's still very real. We still are having a real experience. And so when we look at the seed of where is all that coming from, right? Well, I'm the one who's thinking, I'm the one who's holding the attitude. So the origin of all of this non-physical activity is from me, the non-physical being. So we use the term spirit or soul to have the awareness of the self as I am a spirit, I am a soul. This is the essence of spirituality. And although those words are used a lot, I know you just used it, it feeds my soul, we haven't ever really honestly gone into the experience of being a soul. We talk about my soul, and when we say my soul, and I know it sounds very spiritual, but when we say my soul, it sounds like something over there, like my car or my house or my soul. So there's me and there's my soul. And what we're trying to suggest is it's not that there's me and my soul, but that I am the soul. I, the soul, and this is my body. So once we start to experience that, this is entering the realm of spirituality. So this is the essence of Raj Yoga, spiritual study.
That's very interesting what you're sharing, this last part about defining what spirituality is. Because one of the questions that has come up is how the state of me, the soul, even if I'm not aware that I'm the soul, my state of how I feel. I know psychology goes more into like my mood, if I have depression or not, but the state of how I feel does seem to affect even how much I even physically consume.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, which is again fascinating. When souls are, say, going into a depressed state, some go in one direction, they eat less, others go in another direction, they eat more. So it is fascinating how, again, that spirituality, the state of me, the being, can really affect the relationship with the body and the care of the body, the physical sustenance, and somehow disconnect the signals that are naturally there of what the body needs. Mm-hmm. So proper care of the body.
The lines do get, I'm not sure if it's really the proper words I'm using, that the lines are blurred, and we'll be touching on that in the next few topics, but that the quality of food, that's not even talking about just minerals, but What if the food's spoiled, for
Right,
example?
yeah.
You know, it affects, I assume, my mood as well, as much as, you know, that's obviously going to affect the physical well-being of the body. But even when it comes to just how you, just the vibration in food affects you, the soul, but also affects the body too.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, this is entering into again the realm of the quality of the physical sustenance, and that's the quality of the physical sustenance does affect the care of the physical body and our sensitivity to the quality of the physical sustenance. I know when I was very young, and again, this is not in any way to insult craft dinner, the packaged craft dinner. But I went through a phase where I loved macaroni and cheese. And it's just the way it was in the household that we just always, there was the home cooked food. There was not processed food. That's, you know, that. And I remember making macaroni and cheese from scratch. And it was a very different qualitative experience from packaged. And just having been in that environment for so long that when I was exposed to more processed food, which I say I am now, it was such a qualitative, like I could really feel on every possible level, from the physical to the emotional to the spiritual, there was a big difference. And so we do live now, we've increasingly, and there's various reasons this arisen. We know of those times when there wasn't, you know, proper preservatives, etc. And we always had to have fresh and home cooked food and everything. And what was that doing for the body? And so that, and as souls, it's very interesting. As souls start to explore spirituality, this idea of I'm a soul, and all that implies. This is why I don't think it's a really full answer. I appreciate being asked, but there's so much involved in saying I am a soul. But as we go and we experience the significance or implications of saying I am a soul, it's amazing how it really affects our sensitivities. I'm not saying it makes us more sensitive or emotional, but just that we suddenly become aware of things that were always there, but we just didn't pick up on because we were just operating through a different awareness, consciousness. So as we become more sensitive, you will hear souls naturally. Their physical diet starts to shift very naturally. You don't tell them anything; it just starts to shift because they're now more sensitive to what's going on.
I regret I can't read if there's any other questions there. Can you read?
I don't think so.
Okay.
They may have gone by.
Oh, just after that question.
Yeah.
About spirituality. Okay. But it's interesting, you know, because when we're talking about physical sustenance, I know we've been focusing a lot on physical food, but I think it really just can be so much more than that when it comes to physical sustenance, you know, sustaining relationships, when it comes to many really find, you know, the weather, or
it could be wealth, it could be
jobs.
A number of different ways. Again, we're trying to fulfill a spiritual need through various physical mechanisms. Yes, it could be people, it could be position, it could be possession, shopping, whatever. We're trying to fulfill something in the soul. I apologize. So practicing spiritually would mean I am conscious of being a soul. Yeah, exactly. That's really the seed, the starting point of spirituality, is that this idea, I am a soul, and maybe we'll make the closing commentary around this, but I am a soul and I am operating through this body. This is kind of where spirituality begins.
Would you say that because it does feel like we have spiritual amnesia? So what does that mean, being a soul? What do I eat? You know, what am I gravitating towards?
Yeah.
Is it like, because there seems to be a difference between that, no, I know what's really going to sustain me versus, okay, I'm going to look at a textbook. It's going to tell me that this is what's going to sustain me. So this is what I'm going to honor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not really, I don't know how sustainable that would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there's sort of two ways that we can try to get at this. One is from the outside in. So, I read a textbook or exposed to some rituals or whatever the case may be. But the other is I actually do the practice. So from the inside out, I actually experience myself to be a soul and then sort of watch how that naturally starts to sort of move me into operating differently with all of these different physical resources. I just start to operate differently. There's a very beautiful, one of the examples I really enjoy, because of course there's a massive environmental movement on the planet right now. And the first student, Brahma Baba, went really into the depths of spirituality and what it means to say, I am a soul. And as a result of that, he just, the way he operated and I'd say he's probably one of the first environmentalists, but it was very natural, so natural. No one had to tell him, you should recycle or you should turn off the lights. I mean, it was just so natural. And it wasn't that, some people think, oh, your recycling is spirituality. It's not from the outside in. It's because he was becoming more sensitive to this very peaceful nature that is innately ours as a soul, very peaceful, very gentle as a steward of the planet. It was just so natural that the care he took with everything entrusted to him, whether it was finances or physical resources or relation, everything he wasn't using them to fulfill himself spiritually. He was getting his spiritual fulfillment from a spiritual source, and therefore he could use all the physical resources in a very benevolent way, rather than trying to fulfill himself.
Seems so connected to, as I was mentioning about the statistics about, in the US, that there's a lot of consumption of food, but there's actually the medical community really finding that there's malnourishment, there's a lot of consumption. But related to this aspect about the first student in this study, when he became more and more spiritually full, he could use things in a worthwhile way. How about in terms of even just being able to, the processing of food for this body? I wonder, again, if there's a parallel in terms of, because you would even hear from neurologists sharing that we use only 10% of our brain. It's kind of scary. I'm like, what's all the other parts for?
Well, definitely, again, I think if we could somehow, and I know we're waiting for science to prove this to us, and sometimes I think if we wait for that, it might be too late, but they're sort of moving in this direction of the will of us as souls, what effect it has on the body. Even disease is now understood to be dis-ease. So that as I, the soul, go into a state of dis-ease or unease, that I feel peaceless or anxious, there seems to be a connection to how the physical organs are operating. So I'm not able to digest, the body can't digest food properly. I have an upset stomach because I'm, say, so nervous. The soul, I'm so nervous. So they're slowly starting to, so yes, it could very much connect to, it's so powerful, our effect as spiritual beings in these bodies, massive effect on how the body operates, which I know we don't, but we do and we don't. Souls will say, yeah, no, I know that this stress is causing me ulcers, so we kind of do, and we're selective sometimes about that relationship between me, the soul, and the effect, the state that I'm in, and how it affects the body.
I wonder also if it's just not really being able to accept the cumulative effects of things. stress is increasingly becoming the #1 contributor for all the other physical diseases, right? But yeah, I know it does that, but I can't really appreciate or even have the power to be able to do anything different.
Yeah, there's several pieces to that. It's often said that we're all at minimally have low-grade anxiety. Like constantly we go through the day, what's going to happen? Is everything going to go the way I want? So there's kind of this bit of low-grade anxiety there all the time. And so we might be numb to that. We may not be aware of the effect that that's having over a long period of time, and we don't know what to do about it. Again, there's spiritual issues, so we might take medication, a variety of things. I know that more and more doctors might recommend, maybe you should try meditation. So, and very often, perhaps it's a Freudian slip, but souls rather than meditation will say medication. They do have a similar root. So yeah, I think that more and more it's being recognized that how the physical is deeply affected by the spiritual.
Now, we actually started late, so which is why we're running.
Because we were so technically inept. Challenged.
But something also came up in terms of physical sustenance. We're talking a lot about consumption and use, but physical sustenance is often used as a way to show care, abundance, and generosity. And I think that can be a bit of love, and it feels like that's a very sensitive topic.
Oh yes, yes. I don't know if we can.
Judy, are you gonna eat that? I made it. I mean, I spent a lot of time making it.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a very sensitive topic, and again, we want to show love, and that's a very beautiful thing to want to do, and. There is a way.
Level, what is that?
On a spiritual level, I always use the word benevolence when it comes to love and value, to deeply value another being, to deeply respect. And love, of course, we connect it to unconditional. We love unconditional love. We don't like conditional love. So when it comes, this term unconditional means with no strings attached. So the term detachment is connected, that there's no strings attached. We love this kind of love, unconditional love, equal for every being. So when we get into that, are there spiritual ways to express love? Again, we're trying to do it through the physical, but are there spiritual ways? I'm so sorry. The pressure of taking love, yeah. Yes, I often
maybe you want to repeat the question.
I think it's the pressure of taking love. I think, let me know if I read that properly, the pressure of taking love. So yes, I'm one of these that often people are trying to feed me, and they seem a little bit disappointed when perhaps I don't take the food or eat all the food or whatever the case. It's literally like, this is taking, thank you. This like they're saying, this is my love. You've rejected my love. So, and this is a whole nother topic where if it's true love, does it, it's almost as if, are you giving love? Or are you taking love? You're making a gesture is being made that says, I'm giving you love, but then there's a lot of sorrow. It's almost as if I was expecting some kind of experience in return. So there's a lot of expectations connected to that expression of love, that I'm giving you this food in love, and so you must take it or else I will be unhappy. And that's a very strange packaging of love. So this love and detachment, this love that's free of expectations or even any show, altruistic love. Again, this is roaming into the spiritual sort of realm, but that alone is a full topic that would take other sessions to explore. but definitely this concept of love has gotten very tied up with food. So invisible strings attached to the giving. That's exactly what we're trying to say tactfully, that there are invisible strings attached to the giving. There are expectations or needs or even desires. I need you to take my food or I will be very unhappy. I'll be very upset with you. So painful. Yeah, it really distorts relationships. You know, how to get relationships back into very healthy places. So we always say, start with yourself. Start by developing a loving relationship with the self, and then it might be more healthy with others. Om Shanti. It might be more healthy with others. So this is one thing I very much enjoyed, and learning how to bring it full circle, learning how to feed the self spiritually. So I'm not so hungry for others to sort of receive my love through physical sustenance, because I actually need love so much.
Wow, this topic of physical sustenance is, it's really vast.
It's vast, it's huge, actually. I mean, we didn't even get into eating disorders. That's a whole other ball of wax. But it's clear that we have, in terms of consumption, of course, addictions, and it's not just food, there's various forms of trying to fulfill some sort of spiritual need through physicality. And how, as soon as I start to get the spiritual need fed spiritually, my relationship with the physical comes into alignment as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a very sensitive topic.
Yeah.
And our next topic, our topic next week is a peaceful diet.
Lovely.
So so we're gradually moving into more and more of a subtler aspect of what this all means for us as souls. So perhaps maybe we will have a little reflection.
It's a very basic reflection. What is this idea of spirituality? So as I sit here, I am able to observe the physical body. I'm aware of its presence, its outline, perhaps the pressure of its weight in the chair. I'm aware of the breathing of the body, the heartbeat, all those various functions going on as if on their own. I can observe everything about this body. And that brings the question, who am I? The one that's observing the body. The body does not observe me. I am observing the body. So who am I, the observer? And I start to trace that feeling, I, the observer. Where is it originating from in this body, this feeling of thinking, observing, reflecting? Where are those activities originating from in the body? And as I trace them to their origin, it feels like it's happening, originating from behind the forehead. This is where thoughts originate from, reflection, this idea of observing, as if I, the observer, am seated here, behind the forehead. And the body is wrapped around me. The housing in which I reside. The body is like a very tall tower, and I am sitting in the penthouse. I, the thinker, the observer, I, the being. I am aware that this body exists in this current form for a limited time. It will eventually perish. Whereas I, the being, there's this feeling that I am distinct, a different kind of energy than the matter of this body. That I can engage in very refined activities such as thinking, observing, reflecting, decision-making. That I am a very unique form of energy. That I might be the reason this body even functions. That I am the life in this body. And the state I am in can affect the functioning of this body. When I am nervous, afraid, or maybe excited, the heartbeat increases. When I am anxious or scared, perhaps the stomach becomes upset. I am the being, the life in this body. I'm not physical, but I do exist. I'm a very different form of energy than the physical matter of this body. And when I become very still, quiet, introverted, my mind very plain, uncomplicated, it's easier to experience my true form, free of the physical or the image. I'm this very delicate, exquisite form of energy, a tiny spark of light. And packed within me are remarkable capacities, such as thinking, reflecting, observing, but expressing and experiencing, remembering, and all the qualities, such as peace, love, happiness, truth. Those are contained within me as well. A spiritual study is all about remembering the self, reconnecting to myself as a spiritual being. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I guess I can't defer this to you anymore. You can help me, though, in terms of what upcoming sessions we have. So today is Tuesday, so we do have inner fitness, and I think the topic is form for this Saturday at 2 o'clock. And we, of course, have self-care that's at 4 o'clock. And just wanted souls to also be aware that this coming weekend, so on Saturday, there will be an English Raja Yoga workshop. The topic is inner purpose, and that's at 12 o'clock to 1:30. We will have another English workshop, Raja Yoga workshop, and that will be at the last Sunday of the month. So that would be inner purpose, and that's at 5 o'clock to 6:15. Also taking place this weekend, and will actually continue to the following weekend, will be the 4-day Raja Yoga Hindi course. So that will be as well at 12 o'clock to 3:30. So just make sure you are registering for the proper one before you land yourself into the wrong session, so you're aware of that. And I believe that's about it. Other courses or sessions, you're welcome to visit the website, but we try to send out a weekly email of upcoming sessions. You're welcome to go on the website to subscribe, or just check them out on the website as well.
And the only thing I'll add is that this month in June is a very beautiful UN day. On June 21st, I think that's the summer solstice, is the International Day of Yoga, UN declared day, International Day of Yoga. And in preparation for it, we've already started to put on our national YouTube site playlist a series of videos based on a different understanding of yoga. So they are around movement, but more the movement of the soul, not so much the body, although that's also included. But you might want to, if you're interested, just visit our national YouTube channel, and you can get that from our national website, brahmakumaris.ca. And there should be an icon for the YouTube channel off the home page, brahmakumaris.ca. And then June 20th, the Sunday, which is also World Meditation Hour, there'll be a very special program. Some more news of that will come.
Thank you for joining.